r/AskReddit. What's your I finally met my online friend horror story? Back during WoW's second expansion there was this guy in my guild I'd become friends with mostly through other friends. We talked more and more over time and became fairly close. He had this arsehole roommate and I could hear the guy sometimes, especially when something went wrong during a raid. He'd scream and throw fits. He was pretty awful sounding. My friend told me he wasn't just loud and obnoxious, but verbally and sometimes physically abusive too. I had my own apartment, so I said, you know what, come stay with me. Just long enough to get you on your feet and into a place that's safe. He showed up at my place with a trash bag full of his stuff and a laptop. I set him up in the apartment and started trying to help him find a job. Well, he did not want a job. He did not get a job either. He sat in my apartment, day after day, eating my food and slowly draining my savings. No matter how hard I tried to get him motivated, he would just dig in his heels and somehow become more sedentary. Eventually I told him he had to go. I couldn't afford to keep him there. He was just couch surfing. I spoke to some people and eventually pieced together that his method of securing a new temporary place was playing on the sympathies of his friends to convince them he was in a terrible living situation. It just worked really well on me because he had that loud, obnoxious roommate to play off of. He wound up calling a nearby relative to come and get him. I think his aunt. I don't know what he told her I supposedly did, but I have never seen a more venomous look from someone in my life. As far as I know he moved in with his sister and brother-in-law after that, but frankly I don't care where he ended up. He also stole a bunch of my stuff. First and last time I do anything like that. Guy I knew in college met a girl online and spent every day talking about her. She lived about 6 hours away, so he planned to take a semester off and pursue this relationship. He got a job in her town and asked if I'd help him move out there since my car would hold more than he could take on a bus. I had a long weekend off and figured, why not? A road trip could be fun. I'd drive him out as a goodbye present, and the way back I planned to visit Yellowstone. Well, we arrive and it turns out he doesn't have an apartment lined up and he found a job posting in his girlfriend's town. He hadn't actually gotten the job or even applied yet. I make a bunch of phone calls and find him a room to rent that will let him move in that day with just first, last, and deposit, even without a job. I'm tired and disgusted with his lack of planning, but figure it's worth staying the night and trying to end things on good terms with my buddy. Then he breaks down and confesses that he hasn't actually met this girl. The nights he spent video chatting with her were really just him watching her vlog and jacking it. They've never talked, never texted, never even emailed. Hell, he's never even left so much as a comment or like on one of her videos. She genuinely didn't, still doesn't, know he existed. His plan was to hang out at this game shop she talks a lot about until she showed up and somehow create a relationship from that. He thought that they'd meet and she'd fall in love with him and moved back to our college town to marry him, all before the next semester began. That didn't happen. Instead, I made my buddy buy a bus ticket for his ride back to school and left. He came back to school and got more cringy, not less. I lost track of him after that. I met a guy online, we really got on, and he came over a few times so we could hang out. I did find him attractive and tried to hint that I was into him. Note, I can't flirt to save my life, but nothing ever happened. After a few dates he suddenly vanished offline. No social media, he wasn't answering texts or emails, nothing. I thought he'd ghosted me. After 6 months he reappears. I asked him where he'd been, and he said I don't want to talk about it. A few weeks after, there was a fad where people were googling their names and posting humorous stories they had found about similar people with their name. Mine was about a ship that had my initials, and I started to Google friends' names just out of boredom/morbid curiosity. Googled his name and found a local news story from his area. One of those crime and courts things that he had been done for statutory rape of a minor, online grooming, and had his computer and phone seized as evidence. This is way back in the mid-90s. Bulletin board systems were all the rage. I made friends with this guy from NC. He was friends with a bunch of us from my dorm, mostly females, which should probably have been a red flag, but I was extremely naive at the time. A couple months in, He mentioned he was coming to our state for a wedding and asked if he could come by our college to meet everyone. It was agreed he'd sleep in my dorm room since my roommate was almost never around. Now, there was no discussion or thought of sex, but I was pretty excited to meet this guy and see if he was as funny and charming as he was online. Well, day arrives, dude shows up. I should mention that I and all my college friends were 18 or 19. This guy was 24, or so he said. Guy looked like, and I'm not exaggerating, a cancer patient. Pale gaunt features, long greasy pale blonde hair, except where he was bald on top, and just generally looked like he was about to die, or he was dressed as a gal for Halloween. He insisted on hugging all of us. I was trying to remind myself that looks don't matter, and that he was a cool guy despite his very unsettling appearance. But then, when we all started hanging out, things just got worse. He was asking really invasive questions of all of us, making weird comments to whatever was said, just all around creepy and distressing. I was sitting on the floor with another friend and actively rocking back and forth from discomfort. I lied and said I had hurt my back, and that sleeping on the floor helped, because that night he kept insisting we could share my tiny twin college bed. Nope. Last time I ever met anyone from that site. I've been active in numerous online communities over the years, and have been fortunate enough to hang out with many of the friends I've made there in person. There's only been one incident I couldn't cope with. He picked me up at the airport, which was very nice of him, and as soon as we got into the car, he started picking his nose. There's a lot that goes through your mind when you hop into a vehicle with someone you've never been alone with, and you immediately catch them 2 knuckles deep in their rostrum. I looked quickly away so that he wouldn't know I caught him and be embarrassed if he was just trying to sneak one out before I noticed. If he did notice, he didn't seem embarrassed, so I relaxed a little. I guessed maybe he was just so confident about himself and our friendship that he descended past caring if I saw him take care of a quick book. Fine, sure. When I finally looked back at him, he was wiping his fingers across his dashboard. To this day I'm not really sure what to think, but this guy spent the entirety of the few hours we were together scooping out budgers and wiping them off on parts of his car or the table, or wherever it was that we'd stopped at. I realized I was being transported in a rolling budger shrine and that there was nothing I could touch without needing to wash my hands. I was sitting on a crust of fossilized budger stuff. I had to be. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. He was a nice dude, but I wound up leaving out of our visit early because I couldn't handle it. I don't consider myself a clean freak, but as wiping started to stack it was all I could do not to throw open the passenger door and roll myself out into traffic to escape. I still wonder if I should have done or said anything to save him some grief in the future, but it didn't feel like it was my place, you know? What do you even say? *FLASHBACK 15 years ago, I was talking to a person online I'd known for a few years. We weren't best friends, but we talked daily. Seemed like a nice guy. At some point he asked where I was from, and I mentioned that I lived in Philly and I was going to the art institute there, living in the dorms. Didn't give specifics other than that. Most people knew I was an art student at the time. I posted it about regularly on LiveJournal. A few days later I come home from class and see a message on AIM. Figured out where you live. I'm outside of the dorms at the cafe across the street. Meet me. This guy lived on the west coast, and after finding out where I lived, he makes an unannounced trip across the country, tracked down the building where I lived in, and was camped out at the cafe across the street, asking him to meet him. All of this without any heads up. I immediately felt uncomfortable and didn't really know what to do. It's one thing to meet up, another thing entirely to make a trip cross country and camp out in front of a person's residence. I didn't answer the AIM message right away and needed some time to calm down and think, get more rational. More messages started coming through, each reading slightly more hostile than the last. Okay, this guy traveled all this way, it'd be a dick move to ignore him, but at the same time, I felt like I was seeing red flags everywhere. I was legitimately creeped out. More messages came, and each time, they started to get more agitated, more impatient. He started asking for my class schedule, so he could meet me outside class, asking where I'd be going, where I usually ate, what time my dinner schedule was. He started getting weirdly specific about wanting to know about every facet of my life. I was getting full on stalker vibes. So I lied and told him that I was visiting my sister and that I'd be back over the weekend and I'd just miss him. That's when he said that's fine. I can wait. And he did. 3 days later, he's still there, still messaging me that he's still at the cafe, waiting. What the fuck are you waiting for? Why are you here? Why didn't you tell me you were coming? My privacy was having huge issues with all of this, and it got to the point I started feeling legitimately scared. I made a decision. Rather than meet him, I'd log out AIM, create a new handle, pretend I never existed at that point. I completely abandoned my live journal and started posting under a new name, and went so far as to change my entire online persona. I never heard from him again. Thank you for watching Reddit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more r/AskReddit videos. Share your stories in the comments section below.